Speak to Mukesh Kapila in Geneva. He's professor of global health and humanitarian affairs at the University of Manchester. He was also the director for emergency response at the WHO. All right, Mukesh, always good to talk to you. To sanction or not to sanction is always a question because there are often effects, sometimes large-scale effects on civilian populations. But barring military intervention, there's a lot of questions about how to stop Russia, how to stop financing of its war machine. There aren't very many good choices here.
Indeed, sanctions are part of the framework of conducting a conflict nowadays. It's not just with bombs and bullets. And unfortunately, sanctions are blunt objects.
Right.
I think in the context of the food crisis in the world, which you're talking about, uh, I do not think it's the sanctions that are causing the food crisis, because the food business is completely exempt from sanctions. And also
Exactly.
the into the food business, like fertilizers, they are exempt from sanctions.
So when some say that Western sanctions on Russia are exacerbating problems, do you feel like there's any validity there?
Well, certainly, I think the Russians were feeling the effect of the sanctions economically, and therefore on their war-making ability, are undoubtedly not going to take it lying down. So they are reacting politically and practically, but by shutting off food exports from the region. So in that sense, obviously they're making the situation on food security worse all over the world. So I'm afraid this is very much part of the war in the region, and it is undoubtedly making the whole world go hungry, especially in the most desperate corners of the world, as your story indicated.
Okay, so Russia has shown no indication that it's going to unblockade any of those ports, that it's going to facilitate the flow of grain out of Ukraine. So when the rest of the world tries to react and help to stop the effects of that kind of blockage, is it likely to help much? Or what do you see happening here?
Well, the alternative routes, other than by sea, are being attempted, and I think much more effort will have to be put into that, the land routes, by trucks and trains. Obviously, it's not an ideal solution, and it undoubtedly adds to the costs of food transport and delivery. That is one thing. The second thing is that the countries which are holding their own grains, particularly in Asia, they need to show greater solidarity. Of course, you can't blame them for protecting their own food stocks, but at the same time, if everyone takes a protectionist approach, it certainly makes matters worse. Thirdly, I think people, and this is a tough one to suggest, have to diversify what they eat. I mean, in the end, there are hundreds of edible plants, but historically, we are dependent on about five cereals for most of our calorie intake. And that situation is going to have to change, but obviously that's going to take some time. And all this is not helped by climate change. So, the war is one thing, but quite a lot of the problems of food insecurity around the world are actually being caused by progressive food insecurity, especially in the Horn of Africa.
Great points, Mukesh. As always, good to talk to you.